Hey there everyone, and welcome back to the stream. I'm Josh Justice, aka Coding It Wrong, and as I always say, you'll need to watch to decide for yourself whether you agree I'm coding it wrong. We are at the tail end, and I'm declaring that it is the last stream in our series, Building for Mobile and Web with Expo. You can check out the link right there for some more information about all what we're doing in the series and how we've gotten there. I'm going to introduce it real quick. But this is the 8th stream, and we can be done. This is the thing that we can do today. And I actually have lots of other interesting JavaScript and React Native topics that I'd love to stream about on future weeks. So let's bring this series to a close. Let's get to a point where we've got our Expo app for web and mobile in a good place, and then we'll move on to other stuff to get some variety. So let's review what we've done so far. And I will say, if you're live on the stream, please say hello in the chat. Would love to talk with you, field any questions or feedback you have. If you're watching on YouTube, please drop a comment in and let me know what you have questions about, agree with, disagree with. It's the internet after all, go for it. And I would just love to learn from one another as we do it. So yeah, thanks for joining in. Building for mobile and web with Expo. I'm going to remind myself from our page here just what we've done. Last session we implemented, so we're building a link saving app. This is an app called Firehose that I have had implemented in another framework, and we're building it in Expo. This allows us to have a real native app running like this on iOS, on Android as well. I should get Android pulled up on the stream just so we can kind of celebrate it at the end here. I haven't been doing it every single time. And it also runs in the web just as well. So this is the same app, same code base, using React Native Web and Expo, and it works really, really great. I've already built a to-do list app like this. We're building our link saving app like this as well, and we've made a ton of progress so far. So last time we implemented refreshing the list of links. There was a behavior that was different between mobile and web. As I said last time, it's probably no exaggeration to say that 99% of my code is exactly the same on iOS, Android, and web. There's a few cases where a feature like pull to refresh is just not available by default on flat list on the web, and so we need some other functionality to provide refresh behavior. But almost all the code is shared, and it works really, really great. We implemented navigating to a detail screen. So when we have our list of links here, you can click edit. We navigate to a detail screen. Technically, this is a detail screen because it tells us it is. There's no content yet, but we're going to fill that in today. That's what we're going to work on. And I actually went ahead and built this so that we could add the testing for that navigation to show how that works with React Native Testing Library with an approach we're using to testing that I call screen tests, where we test a whole screen in integration, integrate all the JavaScript together that we can, and that gives us thorough testing coverage when it's challenging or not preferable to do end-to-end tests with something like Detox. We also extracted some components into separate files with the help of our tests. We've got a test suite running here, 5 test suites or test files with 32 tests total. They all pass. All kinds of warnings in the test here. Again, if you're the perfect React Native tester, you can probably fix these. I made some improvement to the warnings in my tests. Wasn't able to get it all the way, but I'm getting good test coverage, and you know what? That's good enough for me. Getting good confidence from my tests that I can make changes knowing that I haven't broken anything. So today we're going to implement the edit link screen so we can actually edit links. And I've been pining for this. As I use this application every single day to track my own links and my reading, I want to be able to make adjustments to the links that I've saved. So I'm looking forward to it. And we're going to see how we can test these separate Stack Navigator screens in this Stack Navigator. And if we have time, which if you've been watching the stream, you know doesn't usually go very well for me. If we have time, we'll add test coverage to our lower level utility code. So let's jump in and get started. There was, though, one bug that I didn't, a little spoiler, not a spoiler, a secret, a surprise. What is the term? Plot twist. There's a bug to fix that I wanted to show on here and show you how to do that, how I did that. So when I was using the app on my real phone, I had my links in here. It was looking good. You may notice actually as well on the stream, the look of this screen is different than before. So I was using a React Native Paper list view with list items. But then when I found off of the stream, I was adding in the buttons, showing them as buttons, and adding in description fields and sources and tags to the links and showing those on the screen. And as I did that and working through the app, I found that actually the scroll was not looking good. This was bumping up pretty much close to the bottom of the screen. I do have a little bit of margin on there in between each of the cards, and that's there as well. But having this go down that close to the little bottom control on the iOS screen is not preferable. I want to use the safe area, just like at the top, the header bar is bumped down below this area at the top for the controls. I want to bump the whole app above this safe area at the bottom. On the web though, and you're going to want to compare on the web and on mobile to see how things are working to make sure you don't break one platform by fixing the other. So on the web, when I scroll down, it looks great. Actually, I've got that margin looks just right. I'm on the web on a desktop, and having this go right to the bottom of the screen works fine. So I don't want to add any additional margin on the web. I want to add it on iOS. And so you could say, okay, well, we know how to do conditionals. We've done these platform conditionals before. I can check if I'm on iOS to add that margin at the bottom. But there's actually a better way. So there is this library that we're using, React Native Safe Area Context. A flexible way to handle the safe area also works on Android and on the web. And the safe area is, what are the parts of the screen that you don't necessarily have access to see or interact with, so you don't want to put things into. When I was growing up, we had rectangular screens. This is a weird world that we're in with these crazy shaped iPhone screens. But anyways, that's enough from an old man. So the safe area is a concept in general and in React Native for this area. And there's some safe area functionality built into React Native, but this library provides it a bit better. And on my last professional React Native project, we saw that React Native Safe Area Context handled it better. And one feature this has is called Use Safe Area Insets. That's going to allow us, show us the amount of space that we need in all the different places. And we're going to be able to use a feature of the flat list to do that inset. So let me see how we did this. And I'm going to compare, looking again over at my cheater monitor and my code from my other Expo web app to see how I did it there. And I will just repeat again what I've said just about every week, that I'm not coming up with this whole cloth. I don't have all of this memorized. I'm looking at what I implemented over time, stumbling through it in another code base, and I'm sharing with you what I found and applying it somewhere else. So do not be discouraged if you take more time to research. I'm checking my own Cliff Notes as I'm sharing here. But when I have mistakes, that's great to share as well. All right, so we are on the unread bookmark list, refreshable flat list, and that was a component that I made to handle the fact that I wanted a button to show up on web for that refreshing. So this is intended to be a very lightweight wrapper around a flat list. And in fact, I take all the props in and I pass them along to the flat list here. So any props we can pass along. So it's really in this application specific component that I want to set up these insets. So let me see how I did this. So from React Native Safe Area Context, I pulled in Use Safe Area Insets. It's a React hook. And we can pull that in here. We can say insets equals Use Safe Area Insets. And well, let's see how I did that. Yeah, then what I did, there's a prop on flat list. And let me pull it up in the docs here. Flat list. Where is it? Well, maybe it's somewhere else. Content container style. On keyboard avoiding view, but that's not the one. On scroll view, right. So flat list is a child or implements the same API as scroll view. And there's a prop called content container style. These styles will be applied to the scroll view content container, which wraps all of the child views. So there's some trickiness with the functionality of scrolling views where like there's the outside of it and the inside of it, and the inside's kind of like a bigger sheet that scrolls underneath it. But when you're working with flat lists and scroll views, content container style can be helpful to style. So we're going to say here, and I think I'm going to put it here. Oh, content container style, styles list. And so we have that there as a static style where we're already applying top padding for web because of the button that's there. But we want to apply a dynamic style as well to there. And what we want to say is this. Padding bottom is equal to insets.bottom. So what this is saying is, however much you need to be inset from the bottom of the screen to be in the safe area, apply that inset to the content container. And so I'm going to save, I'm going to see it. It automatically refreshes, and you can see that now the difference is there's all this space at the bottom, and it's added in that, oh, I think it refreshed a second time. It's refreshing so many times. ESLint is probably the culprit. So yeah, it's allowing me to scroll up far enough that there's this gray area here, so that all these buttons are easy to reach and aren't obscured by the bottom of the screen. Let's check on the web to make sure that nothing is off on here. We'll reload the page just to make sure the reload takes effect. When we scroll down, it hasn't added any space. Probably what's happening, or I'm almost certain what's happening, is that insets.bottom on web here, at least in this web context, is 0, and so it's not being inset at all. So that looks really great. Because I keep my tests running over here, you may have noticed that a test has failed. So let's scroll up and see what's going on here. So in the test, it says no safe area insets value available. Make sure you're rendering safe area provider at the top of your app. So this phrasing is actually interesting, at the top of your app. Well, I'm not necessarily using my components in the context of an app. I'm also using them in the context of a test. And so I'm not rendering safe area provider in the context of the test, so we need to add that in. That's an unread screen. Yeah, I actually ran across this working ahead on something else. Actually, I think it was one of these navigation stories. So let me check out one of those to see. Yeah, safe area metrics. There we go. Yeah, so safe area provider. So what I found I needed to do in this test is actually use the safe area provider and set initial metrics. The safe area usually calculates from the environment that it's in what the metrics are. But by providing these custom ones here, the data is available right away and it doesn't delay getting access to that data. So really, we just need fake safe area provider props, not because the test is failing. Well, the test is failing, but not because of checks are failing, but just because the code is erroring out because the data is not ready. So I want to do something like this, and maybe it could be simplified down, but for now I'm going to do it like this, at least to get the test passing, where I'm just going to say, here's some safe area metrics, and then import that safe area provider in the test. And there's going to be some duplication here. Yeah, initial metrics. And I'm just going to copy paste that into all the tests. I might even pull out this duplication. I think I am going to do that. This is now with 2 of these here. This is frustrating enough that once I get it working, I'm going to pull out this duplication, I think. This test actually needed a paper provider. We could add that in as well. And they're going to need to come back. Apparently I've copied and pasted this a lot already. There's a lot of tests here to get this coverage. Do I want to avoid doing this and extract the duplication first? You could go either way, but let me try to get the test passing first before I introduce an abstraction. Okay, now we got to add the closing tag in all of these tests. This is a little cumbersome here. If there was not a pattern to extract this out, this would be pretty frustrating and would be a good reason to avoid writing tests. And this is an interesting thing about this, right? It's like the safe area doesn't come into what I'm directly testing, but when it comes to testing user interface components like this, like there's coupling to data like this, and it's not necessarily a problem. Maybe there's other ways to architect the code, but you just get used to putting these things in place in your tests and these patterns, and then you can apply them with confidence. Okay, so let's save changes here, and I theorize that this is going to fix these test failures. I was going to run through all the tests. I'll just mention custom navigation bar and custom navigation drawer. I wrote tests for those during the week because those were components I had that were pretty trivial. It was just a custom header and a custom sidebar, but I wanted to get them under test as well. All right, all the tests are passing now. These warnings are just these asynchronous warnings that were there already. So let's go ahead and commit these changes. I'm going to make a branch. Bottom safe area. Okay, so we're adding in all these things, the file and the safe area insets into the production. Fix bottom safe area on link list. But now these are tedious enough that these tests, it's getting cumbersome. Like creating a new test like this is going to be cumbersome, adding all these providers, thinking about whether all the providers are needed. So let's extract this duplication. I'm going to make a function here within the test and say providers, and just providers. Children. Can I just pass JSX in like that? I'm not sure. Let's see. Okay, and we're going to, let me do it like this, just so that there's a So we don't even have a curly, we just have this. And then what I'm going to do is to get in safe area provider, token provider, and then children. And there is also a paper provider that is not necessarily necessary for all tests, but I think it will work for all of them. So that's okay, and even a positive to have that in there for consistency. So let's save this, see if ESLint is okay with it. It's good. So let's just try applying it to one test. Render with providers, unread screen. We could have just wrapped the render function as well, but I don't know, let's just try this. And let's try .only just to run this one test. It's running the multiple files, but that's okay. Okay, I think this worked. So render providers. And it might almost always be unread screen, but I kind of like having that be explicit in this context. I've tried all different arrangements for shared code within React Native Testing Library and React Testing Library tests. But today what I feel like doing is having render explicit here, having the component explicit here, and it's only the providers that we've pulled out because it makes it kind of clear. And that way, if you need to pass something different into unread screen. Now, in our case, we don't currently. We don't need to pass anything different ever into unread screen, but maybe we will in the future, and that abstraction could bite us. So really, actually, in a sense, I'm realizing what we're doing here is render with children is a common thing, and we're just putting a wrapper in the middle of that. So that has a pretty good likelihood of not biting us, which works out kind of nicely. One thing that could bite is if we need different configurations of providers at different times. But in those cases, you might even just inline those providers for that specific test. But in any case, because we have so many tests right now, we have a clear pattern. Yeah, we always need the same providers with the exception of we don't always need paper provider, but it seems like it will always. Well, we'll see in a second, but I believe paper provider should never hurt in our tests. And the fact that some tests had the paper provider and some didn't was kind of an implementation detail. Doesn't really matter. Like this is just the wrappers that are made available. The providers that are made available in general for testing this screen. All of our tests have passed, so let's commit this. We'll say remove duplication in provider wrapper setup. And now, let's just glance at our app. Well, those only changes to test code, so that shouldn't break our app. I guess the previous commit did make a change there. So let's get this pull request up, and we'll have these run as separate pull requests. We can even start our next branch while this pull request is running. And it can make the chapters on the recorded video a bit confusing, but that's okay. It's no big deal. All right, what I want to do is, this should just take a minute or two to run because React Native Testing Library is very fast. Let's talk about what's coming next, and then we'll start coding what's next in just a moment. So we have our first screen, unread screen. That screen is right here. When we click on edit, we're taken to this screen. It's pushed in. If you take a look for how we do it, let's find that. Oh, actually, it looks like in the row itself, no, in the list itself, navigation, yeah, handle edit. So we navigate to the bookmark details screen, and we pass the ID of the bookmark we want to navigate to. And actually, let me get Firefox started up so we can test in there, because I like how Firefox shows the URLs of the web pages. Imagine that, showing URLs of web pages. That's very nice. All right, so this is already a good size, although I am resizing it, so apparently not. Let's copy and paste the URL so we can see the URL that we're on. So we're on the links unread path. When we click edit, it goes into a child page, and the ID, numeric ID, of the link is appended onto there. And so that works out very nicely. So let me just double check in text messages here. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so we have the handoff to the screen working. We just don't have the screen filled in. So we want to go into here and implement the bookmark detail screen. And what we want to do is similar to what's happening in the pre-existing app, where we can edit and it pops open and lets us edit here. But in a mobile context, navigating to another screen works right. But we want to be able to edit the title, tags, source, and comment. This public checkbox is going away because I found that I've never used that very much, so I don't want to pull that over. But really just these 4 text fields. Tags we're implementing with the text field. There might be something fancy in React Native paper we can do for cool looking tags, but I want to at least get it work with plain text to start out. All right, our PR is passing, so let's merge it. That was very fast. Go back to main and pull it in, and we're good to go. Now let's create a new branch. Editing. We may have other branches for our editing functionality, but let's start out with the first little bit of functionality. And I think when it comes to forms, I'm confident enough in how to test those in React Native testing library that I think I am going to go ahead and do test-driven development in this case. We'll see very soon whether that I regret that choice, but let's give it a try. We also have our existing tests from our other screen, so we can follow that pattern to set up tests for this new screen and see how it works. So let's try building out a new screen from scratch. Let's try to really do test-driven development. We do have our bookmark details screen just as a placeholder screen. And that was maybe not created with test-driven development. That's okay. Unless you're really a zealot for it, you can forgive me for that. Let's create bookmark details screen.spec out at the same level here. Even though that is implemented by a folder with multiple components underneath it, potentially, we'll put it out at this level. .spec.js. All right, let's first see how much I can remember before I look at my other spec file to compare. We're going to import render and fire event, because we're going to need to fire events from testing library React Native. And we're going to import bookmark detail screen from bookmark detail screen, and then we're going to describe it. All right, it does what? What does it do? What is the functionality of this screen that we want to test? I think what it is at a basic level, and this might be more granular in the future, but I think this is good to start. It allows editing fields. Do I want to test the display of the current values? I think I do. I'm not sure if I do, so I at least want to test editing the fields of the values. No, I'm sure that I want to test displaying them. With a screen test level like this, I have been, you may have seen in my previous test, been grouping a lot of assertions together in one test because it's acting very close to an end-to-end test. But you know, when you're naming tests, it allows you to sort of choose what you're asserting on. This is related to the same thing because we are displaying these text fields, showing the current values, changing them, and making sure those values get saved back to the server properly. So let's call the test allows editing fields on the bookmark. Yeah, that's how I'll design this test. I want to render the bookmark detail screen. I don't know yet if I need any other providers around here, so I'm going to keep things as simple as possible to start out and see if I need to add those later. So I'm going to assume I'm going to take some things off of there, some, I don't know the name, is that the return value at least, and I'm going to want to first make some assertions. I'm going to say expect get by, well, now I'm not remembering how I've pulled up text fields with labels, so let me check that on here. Not label text per se, not value. Oh, you know what? I think it was actually the sign-in screen test. Well, here, no, it's the unread screen. Yeah, I had to search for it to see because I knew I was looking for value empty string. It allows adding a link to the list. So after you add the link to the list, make sure that the new field has the value of empty string. So that's how we can check that. And it's find by new field, get by label text. All right, so it seems like get by label text works for React Native Paper text fields. So we're going to say get by label text, and let's compare that with a summer's day. No, let's compare that with the pre-existing front end. Title, tags, source, and comment. So let's label them the same way. I want to check the URL. Let's check to make sure that the URL displays correctly. But that is not editable here. Do I want that to be editable? I have actually found that I've wanted the URL to be editable when some extra junk gets included in. So let's just do that. Get by label text URL to have prop value, and the value is the bookmark attributes URL. So we don't actually have a bookmark yet, and ESLint is going to tell us that. Ooh, I see this text is actually too small. Let me do this. Yeah. So we need a bookmark defined. Let's define it up here. Const bookmark ID 1 attributes URL. And I know I'm going to need the other fields. Let's go ahead and put them in there. Source, my source, tags. Tags, let's hold off on tags. Comment, my comment. All right, so bookmark attributes URL. So there are a lot of different views on test-driven development. One way is only write enough of the test to get a failing test. And actually, we've already gone a little bit longer than that. But let's just to make sure we build out one thing at a time, because React Native can have some challenges with asynchrony, with getting these warnings and stuff like that. So let's write just this much of the test and get it passing. And I do want to say, actually, this is a new file, so we're going to need a rerun test. I'm going to focus down just on the detail test file. All right, so what it says is no instance is found with accessibility label URL. So let's get that added in. Bookmark detail screen. One of the things that tests do, test-driven development does, is allows you to focus on one thing at a time. So at this moment, I don't need to do all the design I need to do for this screen, which could be sort of a overwhelming empty, blank slate. I can do just enough to get this test passing. So let's remove this text, and we'll say text input. We're going to say text input, and label equals URL, I think is it. Let's save this and see if this works. These tests do take a little while to run, maybe because my processor is used for the streaming. That did not work. So we can actually look on the screen. So that does say URL there. Oh, I wonder if it's the fact that it's the only element being returned. Let me just wrap it with a view. Because we don't ultimately want this to be the only element returned. So let's go ahead and return a wrapping view now, and maybe that makes the test work. No. No instances found with accessibility label URL. So that's surprising, because it sure seems like that's what we did on unread screen. So get by label text URL to add. Let's take a look at this unread screen. Oh, there is a separate accessibility label. Prop. I do kind of feel like that should be used for screen readers accessibility, even if the label should be used if the accessibility label is not there. But maybe not. And maybe it does, but the tests don't do that. All right, now it says expected the element to have the value this, but received null. Okay, how can we get this value in? Well, we could hard code it, but that doesn't get us where we want to be. So instead, let's make a way to pass this in. We want this screen, following the pattern we've done, we want this screen to actually hit the server and load this record back and come back. And I've described on a previous screen that I'm not using a shared context to store the data for these different bookmarks across all the different screens, partly for ease of testing, partly because of user experience, because I want to make sure I get the fresh value on every screen. And so we're going to actually integrate with this use bookmarks hook on the screen to pull it in. So let me see how I stubbed out request to the server in the other spec. Yeah, HTTP, mock HTTP, and then mock the resolved value of JSON API response, forget, etc. And then I checked that what it was called with. Yeah, okay. All right, so let's follow this. We're going to import, and you can watch the previous streams to find more information about this. In our test, and we're going to write the test first before anything else. We're going to say const HTTP equals mock HTTP. We're going to say http.get mock resolve value JSON API response bookmark. So have the server return bookmark in the JSON API format, which is the format that we use. And then I am also, before I forget, I'm going to want to say expect HTTP get to have been called with change me. Because I'm going to let the... this isn't technically test-driven development because we would ideally want to write out what HTTP get should be called with. So I am going through multiple layers here. So I'm going to do test-ish driven development. But so now I'm saying this component should call this endpoint on the server, should get this back, and then should display this on the screen. So let's actually move this expectation above it. I think that'll make sense. So now that we've called that up, it says HTTP client default mock return value is not a function. What is that in? In mock HTTP. Oh, you know, there's some instruction I didn't follow. Oh, I didn't document it here. That's why. All right, so you need to... I need to add this instruction in here. To use this function, call the following at the top level of your test. Path to HTTP client. Yeah. So we want to call this. We need to do just mocking here because I'm mocking out at the level of this HTTP client. So this is going to go up 1, 2, data level. All right, so now we're mocking out this HTTP client module of mine at the just level, and then we're setting the mock resolve value. Okay, so expected HTTP get to have been called with change me, but it was called 0 times. Now we can implement the real call we want in here. No, not in here. In here, bookmark detail screen. And let's follow the example of our unread bookmark list, partially to remind me how the API of my thing works. No, it's at the screen level. Okay, bookmark client, use bookmarks. This is our custom hook to retrieve the bookmarks from the server. And then in here, we're doing load from server, and in the use effect, we load from server. I don't think I need this callback here because I don't think there's going to be a need to reload it, so I'm just going to put it directly in the use effect. So use effect, when we load this page, we want to call bookmark client dot. And here we did was bookmark client dot where, and that gets us all the bookmarks that find a certain criteria, follow a certain criterion like red, false. But here I want to do something different. Let me find my docs here. I made this little cheat sheet page for myself for my stack that I use. So this is my library that I made. It's just a very, very trivial library for accessing a JSON API backend. Find with an ID. Maybe a surprising name, but that's the pattern I'm used to from Ruby on Rails, influential in the culture. So now we need to pass in the ID here that's being used. And let's just say, oops, no, find ID. And let me say change me, fake change me, because that is not the ID I want. This is not the production code I want. But let's just see where this takes us. Again, let me add a qualification here that this is not technical test-driven development. But I'm just doing here. Exhaustive dependency, we do want bookmark client in there. I guess we need to do something with that data in a little bit, but let's wait to let the test drive us there. Cannot read properties of null, reading token. And I remember this from before where because our use bookmarks uses our authenticated token to authenticate with the server, this is where we found that we needed in our other test mocking of the token provider. So let's copy it and let's go ahead and use this provider's wrapper. I think just even having one provider is enough of a reason because we found this pattern helpful. Let's do it here. But let's only add the token provider for now. Token provider comes from data token. And we said skip loading. And so I think this may be enough to fix this error. Oh, but we have to use this function. Thank you, ESLint, for reminding me of that. Now I think this will fix this function. One of the reasons that it is a good idea to build out your tests gradually like this in React Native is that way you're not overwhelming with all kinds of errors and warnings and missing pieces of providers and things like that. You're able to add things one at a time. Okay, so it says expected change me but received bookmarks / change me. So that is closer. That makes sense that http.get is called. That HTTP client has the server configured. So we're just going to the bookmarks path underneath there. But change me is not really the idea the path we should have. The URL I happen to know should actually have bookmark.id. So we want the server to request this ID, and maybe I'll just say 42 even, so it's clear that it's not just a 1, it's a specific value that's coming in. So we'll get the server to tell us we should have requested 42. We should have requested 42, but we requested change me. So let's see how to fix that. Here we have the ID hard-coded to change me, but we need to get it from somewhere else. Where do we get it? Well, if we go back to our unread screen, and what level was that at? At the list level, we're navigating to the bookmark detail screen, and we're passing the ID as one of the props or params of that navigation. So let's check the React navigation docs to see how on this screen we should be receiving that argument or parameter to the navigation. Navigation, getting started. Passing parameters to routes. Details screen has route and it has route.params. So let's try that. Let's write that out. We'll say route const ID equals route.params. And now we'll just pass that ID from the params into here. Okay, this will still not pass, but it'll tell us why, or give us more of a sense. We can't read properties of undefined, reading params. The reason for this is we're in our code here. Oh, we need the ID as a dependency there. In our code here, in our test, we're not executing bookmark detail screen in the context of React navigation. All that's happening is all we're wrapping with is token provider. Previously, when I talked about the screen test approach, I noted that React navigation has native code dependencies, but Jest and React Native Testing Library tests can't execute native code. And so what do? That's why I scoped these tests down to a screen to say, hey, we're not running through React navigation itself. We're just running what is the API that our screen needs, including what is it that React navigation will pass into our screen, and we'll pass it in ourselves. What is our code calling back to React Native navigation, and we'll just mock that out and make sure that call happens. So how can we get in our test to have this passed in? Well, what we can do is just pass it directly. We can say bookmark detail screen route equals route, and we can construct just enough for this route object to pass the test. And we can just say, actually, even just in one line, ID bookmark.id. So what we're saying here is we're passing in an object that fits just the part of the route object from React navigation that we need. If they ever change their API in the future, then our test wouldn't cover it. But for now, we're testing out the contract that, assuming React navigation works that way, is our screen going to do its part? And I think we'll actually see this assertion pass now because I think the data will correctly be available. Open up my seltzer water here. All right, so the test says we expected bookmarks 42, but we have bookmarks 42 with a question mark on the end. That's actually something I did lazily in the library because adding that in for a query string in a URL doesn't hurt anything. even if you have no parameters passed into it. So that's fine. We'll just update our test assertion to match that because that is a correct expected value. Now our tests have sort of driven out the correct call to the server side to get that bookmark. Now we're back to the error we got before, where we expected the element to have the prop showing the URL of that bookmark, but it's not showing it. So now let's implement that, getting the screen to output that for the text input. I think what I want is just simple use state. Again, we're not using a context or anything like that. We're just putting that directly in the component. When I get the bookmark, set bookmark. I was going to put that on there. Although the test isn't driving me here, I'm going to go ahead and put catch console.error because that bit me before. I had trouble understanding what was going wrong in a test because the error wasn't actually being logged out. So let's just log that out so we don't regret it. So this should set the bookmark, and then the bookmark should be available here. And we should be able to say value equals bookmark attributes dot URL, because that's just the data structure that JSON API uses. And is that how we want to do this, or do I want to have separate state values? Because the setter for this, well, I don't know. Let's try just having the value, and then the setter can be separate if the test will still pass this way. Cannot read properties of undefined reading attributes. Okay, so the bookmark is not actually there. Oh yeah, I'm a React developer. I know that use state should have something to start out. I do think I want it to be null though. And so I just want this to not blow up. And so what I'm going to say is when it first renders before that bookmark is loaded, if no bookmark, return null. To do loading state. We'll want some kind of loading state in the future, but just to keep us focused on what this test is driving us to, we're just going to keep this happening to keep it from blowing up. No instances found with accessibility label URL. And that's because when it first renders, it's not there. Okay, so we can put in a find by. We found that that was a good way to handle asynchrony. Find by label text. And we'll make this test async. Wait, find by label text URL. So wait here until URL appears and then proceed with the test. Error. Cannot read properties of undefined reading URL. Well, let's console log the bookmark here. Maybe what comes back from there. I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's a different data structure. I think that's what's going on. I forgot about this because I don't change and work with my client library all the time. So bookmark is set to data, and then under there is ID, because this is actually the response from the server. And I remembered why I did that, but I don't need to justify myself on here. I'm just gonna fix it. Response, and then I'm gonna say set bookmark response.data. So that's the correct object to save. All right, it logs out fine, and the test actually passes. So we are successfully making the correct request to the server, and we're successfully checking for the right value written out. So this is interesting. This kind of expectation is actually de-emphasized in some testing approaches that I've seen for mocking out servers. But it's important to have it in there because, if I just mock the resolve value, maybe we wouldn't be passing the right bookmark ID. Maybe we'd be passing change me. And so it's important to mock this out to make sure that the right request is going to the server so that you know you'll really get the right data back. Let's commit this already. Get one field displaying on form. All right, with a passing test, that's a good time to do a commit. So let's check the other fields as well. We'll just add, let's add one at a time. Title, to have value bookmark attributes title. So we want to get the title outputted. No instances found with accessibility title. I guess technically our tests aren't driving us to have the label in place. It would be challenging to have a test-driven development test that did that. Really, you can consider that just sort of a visual detail. This is enough. So we're getting past just the current test failure. It says, cool, okay, expecting the element to have the prop my title, but it received null, and I think we know how to fix that. It's bookmark.attributes.title. This is going slow enough that I think I'm going to batch this up. Okay, so that field is there as well. Rather than committing this, I think I'm going to copy and paste this and add our other fields as well. Just looking at the existing code, we have tags, source, and comment. We're coming back to tags though, so let me go to source and comment. And then we'll just get these passing one at a time. No source, source, source. No comment, 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 comment. And I'm not worrying about any other visuals of the text input. I did already want to put that label on there, but we'll handle formatting later. And it's passing. So let's take a look at tag lists, because this is actually handled in sort of a surprising way. So React Native Paper has the tags React Native and Material Design. Visual design on this is a little bit different than in the new app. That's okay. When I click edit, notice tags is React Native space Material Design. So that's the way I formatted that field. Rather than any fancy tag-based component, it was just space separated text. So let's take a look at how that data comes down. On the list of bookmarks, actually, which one is it? Tag list, what is it? React Native Paper. So tag list is a field, and we have these space separated tags there. There's also a relationship to these separate tag data values that is useful for elsewhere. But when it comes, so I basically expose this data from the server in two different ways. And tag list is actually going to be the simplest way to populate the text in that text field. So let's just use tag list there. I'm going to say tag list, tag one, a tag, another tag. We'll say one tag, another tag. That's fine. All right. Let me look at the order of the fields on here. Was URL and title, comment. No, I liked having the comment at the bottom. So let's keep the editing order the same as here. Tags, URL title tags. All right, so let's put tags here. Tags, and then it's going to have attribute tag list, which we need to put in quotes because it has a hyphen in it. So this is just going to be a text input for now. I'm going to get that passing, and I may come back later and use some kind of fancier component, but I'm really going for parity with my existing app at this point. Tags, tags, tag list. Tag list, despite the name, is just a string, so that's just a value on a text input. And it passes. All right, so let's say add other fields. So now it could be interesting to check. Let's check in our actual app and see if it works. I'm not actually sure if it will or if it won't. Let's edit one that has some more information here. Edit. And check it out. We've got URL, there it is. Title, there it is. No tags, source, and comment. Let's edit one of the ones with tags. Tags React Native space Material Design. So those fields are showing up. That's great. And it'll look good. It'll look pretty good based on React Native Paper. But we are now satisfying what's happening in this test. Because of the text wrapping, actually, it's a little bit verbose. So I want to extract those values from the bookmark. let's do it. I think that would actually make this test nicer. Oh, it looks like I have two titles. Looks like I copied and pasted it twice. Tag list I'm not actually sure how to get. Source comment equals bookmark dot attributes. URL, title, source, comment. Let's see if we can get this working. I mean, one of the reasons it can be unmotivating to write tests is when they're really hard to read, so it can help you to make them easier to read. So this works. Now let's see for tag list if I can do tag list colon tag list. That might be because tag dash list is not a valid variable name. Let's see if this works. That works, and that's nicer. This shows at a glance, oh yeah, I'm checking a bunch of fields and checking their values. So I'm gonna add that to the previous commit. So now we're checking the initial values on the fields, but now we want to edit those values. And now is when we're going to need fire events. So we're going to try changing all of them. And do I want, I guess I want separate, I'm going to need variables for these. So let's say new URL equals links. Yeah, that's going to be hard to read. React native.dev. Const new title equals new title. Const new source equals new source. New comment equals new comment. And these are different values from the old values. Const new tag list equals new tag, another new tag. All right, so we want to fill in all these values. And let's go ahead and, well, let's do one at a time. Fire event. And I forget how to type text. Fire event.change text. I was investigating detox this week. That's my excuse for not remembering the API in this test framework, how to change text. Change text in get my label text URL. So change the text of the URL field to new URL. Let's just add this, and we'll see what the test tells us. I assume it will fail. Actually, I don't assume it'll fail. I get a warning. So that's actually allowed. Okay, so let's add the others. Title, new title, tags, new tag, new tags. That's fine. No, it's new tag list. That's good. Comment source. New source, comment, new comment. Let's save. These actually all pass, and this is because they're editable fields. Not technically test-driven development, but I'll take it. So let's add this in. Update text field values. Then what do we want to do? We want to save the changes. So for that, we're going to need a get by text. We're going to say fire event press get by text save. And I don't know if I'll change the label, but save is an okay enough label for now for the button. Unable to find an element with text save. So we don't have a save button. Let's add it in. And I know I want to use a React Native paper button. Button, I think it's just the child of the button like that you expose as save in React Native paper specifically. And it passes. So although this is surprising, we could go ahead and add this in to say press save button. So what do we want to happen when the save button is pressed? First thing is we want to confirm patch request made to server. I'll just say confirm data saved to server. A lot of comment here. Check displayed values. No, let me say it this way. Displays current values from server. Update values, confirm data saved to server, and then we want confirm navigate back to parent screen, because once we save it, we want to, I'm deciding and choosing that we want to navigate back to the parent screen. So let's do one of these at a time, and let's say this is a to-do. So how do we confirm the data was saved to the server? Expect http.patch, and I happen to know that patch is the verb that's used in JSON API to save to the server. At least I think so. Our production code will confirm it for us. Expect HTTP patch to have been called with change me. Sure, let's do it that way. That's one of the kind of surprising things about mocking this route, and this actually makes me think that it's not really the best test-driven development approach to go all the way through here like this. But if you got your head around JSON API in the right way, it could work fine. So expect it to have been called, but it was not called at all. So how do we want this call to work in here? Well, we want an on press. We could call it handle save. We'll make a function here. Handle save. No arguments are needed to it. And we're going to call bookmark client. We'll come back to the async in a minute. So let's check our API again. Find where related writing. Update, ID, and then attributes. All right, so we're going to call bookmark client update. ID is, well, we have ID already. Actually, ID is up here, so we don't need to pull that off the bookmark. We're good. And then attributes. Let's leave that change me. So we're going to need to change those attributes, but this should at least make the call to be made. Now read properties of undefined, reading then. Okay, so we need to actually mock that value. http.patch.mock resolved value. I'm pretty sure I need a JSON API response, but I don't know if I need any data in it for this functionality, so let's just try that. This is just mocked out that it's okay for this test to call patch. That's expected. And in fact, down here I do that. Okay, so now we get the actual call that was made. Let's copy and paste it over, and then let's see what in there is right and what is not, and we'll let ESLint format it. Well, first thing I see is that bookmarks 42 is hard-coded here. Let's copy the variable over instead. And I like to order these fields to say the type is bookmarks, the ID is 42 because this is required to be sent to the server, and the data is attributes change me. We're going to need to change that to something else, but this is at least making progress. So now from here we can actually let the I did something wrong. Oh, you know what? Type and ID were inside the data, and when I moved them around, I wasn't looking closely. That's part of the data prop on the within the JSON body that's sent to the server. This passes. So now let's fill in the attributes with what they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be these new values. So let's say URL, new URL, title, new title, tag list, new tag list, source, new source, comment, new comment. So let's save, let ESLint format it for us, and then we should get a test failure. So we'll need to fill that in. All right, expected and received. So we expected all these values, but we got change me. All right, so let's go and fill that in. We're not actually handling the saving of these values here currently, and so we're going to need to do that. And I have really enjoyed in the past having this be separate values. I mean, this is big enough that I could reach for Formic for form handling, but it's really one of the only forms in the application because it's a pretty simple application. So I think separate state values are actually going to be nice. I'm going to refactor to store separate state values. Am I going to do that? Yeah, I think so. I think I'm going to do that. Am I going to regret that? Tell me if I'm going to regret that, everybody. Let me think for a second. You'd have to do a setter with expanding it. Yeah, it's going to be simpler. I'm gonna try that. I mean, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. So one thing that I can do, well, we got a bunch of changes already in here. So I can't discard those too easily. You know what I can do is I can skip this test though. So let me go. No, not that. Let me comment out this part of the test, so that the test should actually still be passing at this point. And maybe that is what I committed to the server. So everything is passing. So now if I refactor things, I know that things are fine. So what I'm going to do is, instead of this state, I'm going to make a bunch of others. Formic would handle these values for you. It's just how I'm going to do it. Tag list, set tag list, source says source, and comment set comment. I could have changed these one at a time, but I feel pretty confident about this. And this is actually, oh, but this detection, maybe that's a Boolean. So let's set loaded true. And then we're going to, what is the best way to do this? And then if not loaded, set URL. Let's do this. Response, data, attributes, set URL, attributes, URL, set title, attributes title, set tag list, attributes tag list, set source, attributes source, set comment, attributes comment. And I think, yeah, so this is now going to be just URL title, which makes this kind of nice. I really like these nice, simple, controlled fields. This means my JSX doesn't care what the data structure is. Ooh, and that actually collapses down, which is nice. It'll get longer later, I'm sure. Our test passes. And so I've confirmed that this updated data structure for storage is at least enough to pass the current tests. So let me, if I was doing this in smaller steps, I could commit this separately, but let me not do that. So let me go back to this part of the test, this test expectation. And it should still not be what's sent, but now we have the attributes. Well, we need to change them. Yeah, so that is expected to be sent. So we'll say onChange text equals set URL. This is the reason I like this way. I like this extremely simple onChange text handlers. So we're going to set all these values when we change them, and then they should be available for here. So we should be able to construct URL title tag list is, well, I'll come back to that, source comment, and then tag list is tag list. So I expect, wouldn't be surprised if I got something wrong, but if I did this right, I expect this will make the test pass because we're setting the values in the state and we're passing them to update on the server. And they pass. So let's commit this. Send updated values to server. And then we have our last thing we need to do is to confirm the navigate back to the parent screen. Let's see how we did this in unread screen. So in here we said expect navigation.navigate to have been called with And actually, you know what? I think it's navigation.goback. So it's just a matter of to have been called with. Even when you call a function with no arguments, saying called with and leaving that empty helps confirm that it's called with no arguments. It's more specific. And navigation is not defined. So let's see how we mock that out here. Oh, did it this way. We mocked out use navigation. When we just need to go back as the only function on the navigation object because we're only mocking out the API that's necessary. And now we need to mock use navigation. So let's find that. We mock React navigation native, and use navigation is set to a function. So this means that, yeah, this use navigation hook, we're going to be able to use it to do all these things. Let's save it. This should fail because this is not implemented yet because we're doing something loosely like test-driven development. Use navigation is not defined. Oh, no. Oh yeah, I do need to separately import it this way in addition to the mocking. ESLint should tell us that it's okay. Now our test runs. So yeah, so we expected it to be called with 0 arguments, but it was called 0 times. So in this thing we're doing that's somewhat like test-driven development, we see the test fail first, we see it red, and then we make it green. So what's the minimum we can do to make this green? Okay, what we can do is, after bookmark client update, we'll make this an async function. We await, and then we're going to say navigation go back. And I'm going to remember the other way I bit myself. That's not right. Before, which was not catch the exception here. So let's catch it. Console error. Again, not technically test-driven development, but this is going to prevent it from biting us in case we do something wrong. Navigation.goback is not defined. So let's go into unread screen. I think it's actually here where we use navigation. We could get the navigation object a different way because we're right at the top of the screen. But by doing it this way, we're actually going to be able to have a consistent API across each of our different components for the way it's done. So that'll be nice. Use navigation. So I think this may actually cause the test to pass. And I'm pretty confident in the API of navigation. That's why I'm test driving this out. If you weren't confident in it, you might want to write it first. But because we've written it once, I feel confident. All right, expected to be called with 0 arguments, but it was called 0 times. So I think this is because of asynchrony. And so what should we do? We could wait for some kind of loading element in the indicator, but I think I'm not 100% sure if this is the right way to do this. But I think we can use a wait for. I think we can say, I've been able to successfully wait for expectations. So wait for navigation go back to have been called. So let's see if this works. Even just the fact of this asynchrony coming in here is what makes test-driven development hard in React and React Native tests like this. All right, we got a check. We got a warning here, one of those old warnings. Now, but because these asynchrony always gives me some cause for concern, let me make sure the test fails if I change this. Let me take, what component is this? Here it is. Let me take navigation, go back out and make sure the test fails because I changed my test. Fails. Expected call with 0 arguments, number of calls. And you saw that it is 0. And you saw that it took a few seconds to get there. So I think it's actually waiting for that to be called. I saved again. We're letting the test run again because it's a check with warning. All right. And once that warning may go away once we have a UI element to wait on. So we'll say go back after save. So let's take a look in the application now and let's see how this runs, if it runs. I would not be surprised either way. All right, React Native learn once, write anywhere. Let's click edit. It loads up. You actually saw there was a bit of a delay there while it was loading up. No loading indicator, but we can do that later. So what can we edit? I love React Native, but I don't think we need their marketing slogan here, so we can just delete that out. And we'll say a comment, say RN is great. We'll even type correctly. And let's click save. Notice that save button isn't maybe the way we want it to look, but we've got our functionality in, and let's see if it's working. All right, so it went back to this screen. Now, it didn't update the link. The link's still showing the old values, but I have a theory that if I reload, we're going to be good. Let's try. When I reload, in fact, we are good. So it changed that the value of this bookmark in the server side. If I click edit again, it's going to come back with the new values and be good to go there. The reason this didn't update is the way React Navigation works is it preserves these screens in memory. It's not recreating this screen, and so it did not go back to the unread screen to load it up. And so we could actually change it to get it to refresh. That's something that we could try to do. And we'll try that in just a second. But the thing that I'm noticing is that saving does in fact work. We are actually going back. And so that's good shape. Now most of what we did there was nothing new. This is just part of writing React or React Native components. Maybe it was just some additions to the testing library and the testing philosophy. But yeah, so you can see we're getting to the point where just about everything is just your React Native functionality that you're used to doing. I do want to next handle this issue of this screen not reloading when we go back to it, when we've made a change. We can see the problem again if we go in and just say React Native 2, click Save, and the screen is not reloaded with React Native 2. So how can we do that? Let me double check on my cheater library here, my cheater application, to see how I did that. Yeah, that's what it is. It's that hook, and that hook comes from React Navigation Native. So let's look it up. So we're used to, when a component is mounted, using useEffect. But useEffect is not working here because this component is not unmounted. The screen that's navigated off by the stack is not unmounted. So does React Navigation give us something else? And in fact, it does. Use focus effect. Sometimes we want to run side effects when the screen is focused. And so this is what's happening. Focus is the idea for, oh, you've moved off the screen. Oh, you've moved back. So you're now focused. It's a focus effect. So let's do it. Really, all we need to do is to switch from use effect to use focus effect, and our functionality should work. It may break our tests, so we'll see about that. It may not. Or we may need to add another provider or something like that. But let's try on our unread screen. We're going to import use focus effect from React Navigation Native. And we're just going to change our use effect to use focus effect. And I think we don't need this use effect anymore. Let's save it. Even if the tests fail, I'm going to check here to make sure the real functionality. Oh, interesting. You pass a second argument to use focus effect, but it only accepts one argument. If you want to pass a dependency array, you can use React use callback. Okay, so even though and load from server has a dependency array, so that means, well, let me see how I did this in the other application. Use focus effect, and then use callback. Ooh, interesting. I might have done something weird in my other application, but let's, in this case, load from server is already a callback, so I think we can just say use focus effect, load from server. Let's take a look and see. An effect function must, wait, let me reload. I had a warning there. So let me see with a real fresh run if everything works okay. An effect function must not return anything besides a function which is used for cleanup. So that's interesting. Load from server, use callback. So how did I do that here? Oh, okay. All right, I see what's happening. All right, so I think this will work. Let me follow this pattern and we'll check it out. Callback. Load from server. And that the effect of that one is, so load from server we actually needed to return a value, but for use focus effect we needed to not return a value. So passing that callback in there I think should do it. Let's see what ESLint says about this formatting, if I got it right. Yeah, I'm not looking at my test, looking at my application. Let me reload it. See what happens when we first get to this screen. When we first get to this screen, the data is in fact loaded. Let's click Edit. Let's click React Native 3 and click Save. My theory is that the other screen is going to be updated and get React Native 3 back. It does. It reloads it from the server, so that's great. If we did have shared context, there's other ways we can handle this by like updating this into shared context. But I like the fact that the screens are each going back to the server and getting fresh data. And for the amount of data that I have, that's going to work just fine. All right, so our application functionality is working here. But let's see about our test, what we can do about that. Let's see which test is failing. Native use focus effect is not a function. Interesting. So this may be something I didn't run across in my other application code. It's okay. Test suites 1 failed, so we can find the one test suite. It's unread screen, right? Makes sense. So let's just run the unread screen test. If we want to make this change and we want our app to be tested, we do need to get this passing. So let's see here. We're going to be figuring this out live, I think. Use focus effect is not a function. And is that all the tests in there that are failing? Yep, all the tests are failing because every time we load unread screen, that is not mocked. So let's see if I have this. No, I have not handled this in tests before. So let's see how we can do this. Use focus effect. So use focus effect comes from there. It is a function. We pass a callback to it, and we expect when the component is rendered for that to be called. So I think we can actually simulate that in the component in the test. That's kind of interesting. But I think that's the right thing to do. So use navigation. Oh, in fact, we're mocking React Navigation native to mock out use navigation. And this is saying native use focus effect is not a function. I'd love to not actually mock out use focus effect. So let me see if I don't mock it, if we get past that error. I'd love to use the real use focus effect functionality, but it may not even be possible depending on how they've implemented it, which maybe suggests to me that maybe we shouldn't do it that way. Above error occurred. What error occurred? You're not telling me what error occurred. Can I find a navigation object? Is your component inside navigation container? Okay, so that's not what we want to do. We want to mock out use focus effect. And what do we want it to do? I think actually we don't need to check that it was called. I think what we need to do is, let me see the name. Use focus effect. It's not necessarily a callback, but it's a function. I think we just want to call the function. So whatever function is passed to use focus effect, please go ahead and call it right away. And I think that may make the test pass. Maybe even add a little comment here to explain what's happening because it's a bit abstract. So that's the behavior of use focus effect we want to simulate, even though we're not running through the whole React navigation stack. You called act, you got all these warnings, that's fine. These are taking a while. Oh, 10 tests passed, that's interesting. Time out and wait for element to be removed. An error occurred while deleting link. Let's see the pattern of which tests fail. Delete, mark red, adding a link. So it's these changes. Yeah, check it out. We can display, we can click, we can refresh. But adding a link and marking red and deleting. Yeah, anytime that these changes are happening, it's not working. So let's take a look and see what happens here. What happens when we do these things? When we add a bookmark, we are setting Mark red, remove bookmark, remove bookmark. So why would the change to the use focus effect not cause it to re-render? This is surprising. Y'all may see me stumped here on the stream. This doesn't seem insurmountable. This seems like something we can solve. Let's go ahead and focus on one of these tests to really focus on it. Maybe we can get some logging going to find out what's going on here. But this is showing the challenges of testing at the React Native testing library level and going through these things where we want this behavior, but this behavior relies on React navigation. Able to find element with text new bookmark. So we're adding a new bookmark and then looking for it. So let's log some stuff out. In here, we're adding, say console log 1, console log 2, console log 3, and console log 4. And let's log out here the bookmarks. The set state should still be a set state, so it should still cause re-rendering. Maybe it's a timing issue. So bookmarks is null, 1, 2, bookmarks is 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah, see, check out, it's the timing issue. So bookmarks is null, and the test is proceeding too fast. So it's actually adding in the new bookmark. Is that it? New bookmark. New bookmark is 2. Well, no, let me see here. Maybe it's not a timing issue. Bookmark is null. Bookmark is 1, but we have 1 here, so it's actually reaching this point where we're adding a new bookmark before that comes back. 2, 3, we add in 2, 4, 2, and now this is 1 again. So, okay, let's think through this timing issue. This could actually make our code more robust. Adding, we're setting the old bookmarks and the new bookmark. Maybe that is coming in too fast. Maybe it's best if we wait in the test until we're waiting for URL to add, but maybe we should wait for the bookmarks to come in, because if they come in, so this is one of the problems potentially with us maintaining the state of the bookmark list locally as we are, is if it comes in from the server, that overwrites it. And this, timing wise, this is actually correct. Like if we save to the server, but then a response comes in from the server, we want to take what the server's given back. So I think it's actually a good thing for us to wait in this test, wait for the initial bookmarks to show before we add another one. So let's, initially there's the 1 bookmark. So let's wait for that to show. Let's scroll up to the top, one of our earlier tests. Await find by text bookmark attributes title. So before we fill in the new field, we say wait for bookmarks to load. And I expect that now the test is going to pass. Asynchrony is hard when it comes to these UI apps. So it is a challenge to test them. Our logging is working. It doesn't work. Okay, so let's check our logging and find out what's going on here. I have a feeling we're not going to get to those stretch goals today. Bookmarks null. We get bookmark 1, bookmark 1, 1, bookmark 1, 2, 3, bookmarks 1 and 2, 4, bookmark 1 and 2, but then bookmark 1. So what is it that comes back there? Adding a link to the list. Is it causing a re-render? Let's see how many times load from server is called. Oh, you know what? It is being called multiple times. And I know why. This is good learning. It's fun to figure out a new problem on the call, but if I fail to figure it out, then I'll be frustrated. So check it out. We load from server. We load from server again. A third time. A fourth time. A fifth time. A sixth time. Seventh time. Why are we loading from the server so many times? Well, this is because, without thinking about it very well, I gave a naive implementation of use focus effect, where I'm mocking out React Navigation Native, and I want to do it, but as a result, it's calling it every time through, because every time we render, we call use focus effect. Every time through, that's called. So how can I handle this? I think in my test I need to implement this. So I think this needs to be a jest.function. And then what I want to do in my test is to say, there's going to be some duplication here. Use focus effect. Well, I'm going to say to do pull out to a before each. Use focus effect mock implementation. And we're going to say let effect run equals false mock implementation. And we're going to say if effect run equals true, and then call a function. So this is going to make sure we call the use focus effect function only once until this is rerun again. I don't know if this will work, but this is what I'm trying to do. For our test, because we only have one use focus effect, this should work. We might need more intelligent logic. And this is actually making me think if things got much harder than these tests, I might need to like wrap this effect in another effect that would make testing easier. Well, let's take a look if this will work, if this will cause us to only load once so that our test, not just so that our test passes and doesn't blow up, but that's that we're simulating what really happens. Load from server. Let's skip ahead. The test passes. Okay, great. We have made some progress by mocking use focus effect more appropriately. Let me take out my logging statements in the production code. Was there more in here? Yeah, there's a whole lot of more logging statements. Bookmarks. And I do want to break the test again to make sure we're not just getting a green regardless, but it's really confirming that the functionality is happening. Okay. Adding a link currently passes. It says wait find by text new bookmark attributes title. So let me just make sure if I comment at this set bookmarks that should be running after add bookmark is done, the test should fail because it should be confirming that we actually do add that bookmark in. And it does. All right. So what I'm going to do now is uncomment this test. I believe that this should fix all the tests. So let me just take out the only so that the whole file is run. I want to see them fail. And then I'm going to pull this out into a before each. I think in our case that's going to help. I haven't done much of a before each, but I think this setup will be needed for every one of these functions. So really it was anytime we re-rendered a problem was caused. 15 failed. Okay, yeah. So let's pull this out. And if this doesn't work, we'll back up. Okay. Mock use focus effect. Well, it's mocked, but like provide mock implementation of use focus effect to run only once. And there's probably a load ash function or something that would make sure that runs only once, but this is straightforward enough for now. Let's see. We'll see if it's going to be a late night or if this actually works. It works. It passed. So we had a bit of a sidetrack there, but really what happened is, for the unread screen, we needed to switch from use effect to use focus effect to get our functionality working where we could edit a link, go in here, make changes, click save, go back and have it automatically reloaded for us. But to get that working in the test, we needed to take use focus effect, which is provided by React Navigation Native and not available. And we needed to give it a good mock implementation, which for our test currently is good enough to say, run it only once, and then you'll be good to go. Because we're only focusing on each screen once. And that's probably a pretty robust mock for screen tests, because we're generally only going to focus on the screen once. All right, so let's commit this. Actually, I'm surprised. Oh, you know what? I think this await is not needed, actually. I think that was a rabbit trail, and that was not actually needed. So if that's not needed, I'm going to remove it. That's one of the nice things about reviewing my changes here to see what I'm patching, to see if I can remove something that's not needed. So my theory is, because all those other tests that were failing are now passing, my theory is we don't need that wait at all. That's not the problem. And that this test within the file will pass as well. It does. All right, so use focus effect. We got load from server, and we got that strange callback where it doesn't return a value because that's how effects need to work. Reload unread list when navigating back. Or reload unread list every time it reappears, refocuses. So that's working. All right, we have 29 minutes remaining. And where do we go from here? Editing is working. That's very exciting. You can click back here to go back. I would like a cancel button as well. So let's put in a test for the cancel button. I'm going to copy this. Nope. This should be quick. Always something to make you nervous. This feels more natural to put in a separate test. And we'll say, does not save the bookmark upon canceling. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these constants up. I'm going to do this because we go to the screen. We don't actually need that other expectation because it's already happening somewhere else. We don't need to check the values are displayed, but we'll just update the values. And then what we're going to do is we're going to press cancel. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead, because this test is pretty similar, I'm going to go ahead and put in the assertions. What I'm going to do is I think we're not going to need the asynchrony here. So expect the navigation go back has been called, and expect HTTP patch not to have been called, because we don't want to save any values to the server when we hit cancel. Actually, we don't need to destructure this either. So let's see if this works. So we are going to the screen, changing all the values, but hitting cancel. Make sure we do still go back, and we the patch is not called. The server is not called at all. And we want to go to the detail screen. Failed. That makes sense. There's some warnings, but no instances found with accessibility label URL. Oh, we do need a wait. We do need that wait. So let's put that in. We need find by label text. Wish ESLint ran a little faster in Sublime. One of the downsides compared to some of the more commonly adopted editors is that ESLint on my machine runs a little slow in that one. Okay, we're now back to our test-dish-driven development approach. It says unable to find an element with text cancel. So let's implement that. I want to put it below the save. I think that's right. We're not going to have an on press yet. We're going to let the test drive us to that point. And actually, one important note about this, we don't need to test the back button. The back button is actually not provided on the screen. That's part of the custom navigation bar. And I tested that separately in the custom navigation bar, but because we're just rendering out the screen itself, there is no back button. That is not in the screen component, so there's no need to test that here. All right, so the cancel button is being found, and then it says it expects navigation to go back to have been called, but it was not. It does seem like we got past this point where patch was not called. I think actually it'll be more robust to put this after this. I think we're going to get the same failure here, though. I'm going to say function handle cancel. Yep, we're getting that error. So now no, navigation go back has not been called, so let's just do that. That should get us back past that point. Oh, thank you, ESLint. We do need actually to call the function. As tedious as that is, we need to tell our code what to do. And it passes. So now we've confirmed that we have a cancel button that is going back to the parent screen, and it confirms that by the time that's called, patch has not been called, so it's not saving the data to the server. And let's see it in action. It's actually reloaded already on this page, but let me just reload the app. That was interesting. Notice that the app, when it automatically reloaded in the navigation screen we were on. So we go to here, React Native 5, we click cancel, we go back, it's not updated, we reload, it's still not updated. But if we go in, click React Native 5 and click save, then it is updated. So great. Let's commit this. Let me do just a little bit of styling on here because I want you to see how within the tests we've run with test-driven development, oops, we don't need that only in there, how it allows for refactoring styling. Make sure the test passes. And I'll patch it. All right, so now that we've tested that, let's just do a little refactoring of the buttons. We're going to pull up React Native Papers docs, look up the buttons, outlined and contained. So I don't know if this may be yet another area that I'm not following material design standards, but I'm okay with that. My main button I want to be contained, and my secondary one I want to be outlined. So let's say mode equals contained and mode equals outlined. So let's save. Let's see how that looks. So save and cancel. That looks better. That looks like what I remember save and cancel looking like on the login screen. And my test still passes. So because I've implemented a test that's not coupled to visual details, but just to the behavior on the screen, just the behavior of the application, I can refactor the styling under test. Set button modes. And there's a lot more styling I want to do with margins and things like that. But I did just remember something I forgot to put in my notes, but it is important that I want to get in. And I've got 22 minutes, so let's see if we can get it in. So I would love to apply some responsive styling to these buttons. And what I'd like to do is, well, let me show you on the web. We haven't even checked to make sure this works on the web. So let's check that. So I'm on here, React Native 5, I click edit, I'm on here. If I go back, I go back. If I change it to 6 and go back, it doesn't save it. If I change it to 6 and hit cancel, it doesn't save it. But if I change it to 6 and hit save, it saves it. Great, so it's working on the web. I probably want to use that screen width thing, and so please set aside some of the visual details here that I would improve separately. But another thing is, this is probably not the way you want your buttons to look on a large screen. We probably want them to be laid out a little bit differently, a little bit nicer. And so responsive design like that in React Native is challenging. It's not the most fun in the world. It's not the hardest, but it's just I'm used to media queries on the web. And I found that there was nothing like that was available in React Native built in. And so I looked at the different options for responsive styling, didn't find any great options. And so a coworker of mine and I, working on a React Native project, this was after this React Native client project, we decided to take things we learned and put it into a very, very tiny open source library for responsive styling in React Native. And so let me just pull that up. I forgot to even link to it. That's how much I forgot about this, but it's coding. Nope. it's React Native style queries. We'll go to here and we'll go to GitHub. It's under my employer at Big Nerd Ranch. So it's declarative responsive design for React Native. It allows you to specify styles for conditions such as screen sizes in dark mode in a declarative way inspired by media queries. So for example here, you could say component A has a font size of 12, but if the screen width is a minimum of 375, then have a font size of 16 instead. And I find this a lot easier and nicer than putting conditionals in. So let's get this library added. Let's add React Native style queries. Our tests are actually going to still pass with this in. And you may remember that before, that for other responsive things in the app, this was not needed. For here, we have this column that is full width down here, but then as we get wider, at some point it maxes out. And that's just using a max width property. So that is all that's needed in that case. But here we need something a little bit fancier. All right, our dependency has been added. Nice and mature at 0.1, but that's where we're at right now. And now I need to look at my cheater monitor here to find out how I laid out the buttons, because this layout of the buttons is going to be very much the same. Button group? Yeah, let's do that. So I actually made a component called button group. And this is just laying out buttons that are going to look good. So button group, we're going to take in children, because we want to lay those out. And we're going to return a view with the children in it. So it's just a view. All right, so now what do we do from here? So something we're actually going to need is import use style queries. Well, let me come back to this. Let me follow the conventions here. Const style queries equals. So just like you often say const styles at the top level of a component when you're styling with styles, we have a style queries object that you can use here. We're going to call this button container. And when you're following this approach, what you do is you pass an array to this style. And these are applied in priority order. So first you can have an object that's unconditional. And you can say flex direction column. So flex direction column, if I'm visualizing it right, that means things go from top to bottom. So the buttons are going to lay out one after the other. We're going to follow mobile first design approach where the default styles are for mobile or small. And then as the screen gets bigger, we layer on conditional styles. So how do we do that? Well, we need to pull in this conditional. There's other ways to do it, but we can say screen width min from React Native style queries. And we say, okay, we've got these unconditional styles. Now how about conditional ones? Screen width min of, and I had breakpoints here. Do we have breakpoints? Yeah, we do. Breakpoints. And that was medium. Okay. We'll just try that out. All right, I'm going to copy this over. Export const breakpoint medium equals 429. I forget exactly why I used that, but there's some width, and we'll experiment with it and see it. Yeah. So that is there. Now we can go over here to button group. Come on, computer. I know you're running a lot of software. We want to import breakpoint medium from breakpoints. And that could be just hard-coded in here, but because we're using these constant breakpoints throughout the app, I wanted to put this in here. So we're saying if the screen is at least as wide as this, then apply these styles. What we want to do is, for wider screens, we want to say flex direction row. So put them one next to each other. And justify content, flex end. So it's sort of a macOS inspired style where the buttons are sort of on the right-hand side as sort of action buttons. All right, we've got these style queries. So this is an API that we've specified by React Native style queries. So we have some unconditional and some conditional styles layered on. So how do we use these? Well, you use style queries with use style queries. We go in here and we say const styles equals use style queries, style queries. So basically take this logic for conditional styles depending on the screen width you're on, and then within the context of this component, find out the screen width and give me the styles back. And then from here, we can just say style equals styles button container. So we're going to get either these styles or these styles layered on for different sizes. So let's save and take a look. And we're going to most easily be able to see this on the web. So let's just go ahead and go. Let's see what happens. We click edit. Okay, that's not what I expected. We're getting errors. Interesting. Oh, I'm not using the component yet, of course. You got to use your component, Josh. Use the button group. Use the lever, Kronk. That's the reference I was looking for. All right, so we're going to import, pull the lever, Kronk. I don't know. There's some reference somewhere. I'll figure it out for a future stream. Group. Use button group from 1, 2, 3. Sure, it's nice to have an IDE that would autocomplete those. Button group. And we want to put these buttons in a button group. So nice and simple in the context of use here. Not a lot of implementation details cluttering up our screen or all the other places we're going to have button groups. So let's take a look. It's loading, and our buttons are aligned to the right-hand side. Cool. They're not spaced out enough yet. I got to add some padding in there. And I actually find that following Mac OS conventions, I really like to have the default action on the far right. So let's switch that around. Let's put the cancel here. And I'm going to compare that because I remember being torn on this in my other app about the order that they should be on small. But let's see it first. Okay, so save is in the very corner and cancel is back from there. Let's see what happens as we get narrower. Well, see at this width, they're still next to each other, which makes sense. But now if we get narrow enough, they're one above one another. And so this is nice. On a nice small screen, we get this nice responsive style where they're above one another, very common on iOS. Bigger screens, they're next to one another. And let's look on mobile. So on mobile, they are in fact above one another. So that's good layout-wise. The one thing I want to figure out is whether I put save on the top or the bottom. All right, it looks like in the context of that application, I actually put the main action at the bottom. So we'll see. I think that's good enough for now. If I decide otherwise, I might switch it up. You can use, the way you would change it if you wanted to change that order is to change the flex direction for column to switch the order or something. But we're getting these designs. And so you notice I didn't need to use any conditionals here. I didn't need to use an if. I didn't need to like put things together, ternary or anything like that. I just had this nice declarative approach that says, by default, flex direction column. And for a certain screen width, change it to these additional styles instead. So let's add that in. We'll add style queries library. And then we'll say, make layout buttons responsively. All right, we're laying them out responsively. We have 12 minutes left, and so I'm trying to decide if we should go ahead to summarizing. I'm going to proceed ahead. Let me check my notes to make sure. Oh yeah, that's what I want to do before I do any more styling, is to talk about the implications of this test style for these different screens. So this is the way you would implement these screens, kind of regardless of the approach you were taking. I want to take a look on that. You have this bookmark detail screen where we got some fields to edit. We load from the server and put it on there. We save or we cancel. If it's loaded, it's not there. And then we have those fields. So this is a screen. This screen takes in a route, gets the URL from it, and then does all this handling. And sometimes it calls navigation go back. On the unread screen, we got some child components going on in there. But here we don't have anything passed in from navigation. We just have the bookmarks that come from the server. And then if we click on, edit bookmark, that actually happened at a lower level. That could be nice to move up to here. But if we are in the bookmark list and we edit a bookmark, we navigate to the bookmark details screen. So this is the way you'd probably write these components, maybe some, barring some rearrangement. So how do we decide to test them? The way we tested them was by creating these screen tests where no matter how many or how few child components there were, there was this one screen test here. You could write other tests at lower levels, but I had mentioned on a previous screen that because this application is pretty much feature complete, I'm not looking to add anything more, I'm just porting it over to React Native. I think a nice thorough screen test is sufficient for my confidence that the app is working. And how do these two tests work? Well, there's a lot going on in the test, so there's a lot to read. It's not like we can just check it from at a glimpse, but what we can see is we're adding these providers for like safe area and paper and token, but not React navigation. React navigation is not being pulled into our test because it has native dependencies, and so we could not run it in our jest test. But in our test, we're just rendering out the unread screen itself. That's all we're rendering out, not the larger navigation container. Unlike what was said in one of those random test errors we got, this is not our app that we have all our providers in. This is the test of one component, one screen at a time. And whenever you're testing something, you're always choosing the unit of how big or small that unit is, and you decide what's in, what you're integrating with, and what you're cutting out and mocking out or just not passing in the test. So what are we integrating with? Well, as much of our JavaScript as possible we're integrating with the exception of HTTP. We're mocking out our HTTP calls so that we could say, oh, the response is return this one bookmark or multiple bookmarks. Or further down, we can say, make a post should be rejected, or when we call post should resolve to this new bookmark, things like that. So our test is isolating us from the back end from these HTTP requests and responses. But we're also mocking out the navigation. So the calls to navigation, to functions on navigation, like navigate, are mocked out as well. So in this one screen, the output is when certain things happen, an outgoing call to navigate should happen. Or really, you could think of it as calling up to navigate, out to this outer wrapping layer of React navigation where that happens. And on the bookmark details screen, we saw input being passed in terms of the route object that's passed in by React navigation. And we saw output come out in terms of navigation.goback to be called in certain contexts. So really, we've isolated these screens so that each one is tested in independence from one another, whereas much of our JavaScript as possible is tested, but React navigation is not. And I feel confident enough about that. I know React navigation works. In my manually testing of using the app, I'm going to see whether I can get between these different screens or not, and my sidebar and things like that. So as long as my test is testing that the right calls are being made and the right data is being passed in, I feel like in the native code level that React navigation is going to integrate properly and everything is going to be fine. So screen tests work for me, and I feel confident enough in our app, confident enough that as automatic dependency updates were coming in, when they passed, as long as it was an update to React navigation itself, I was confident in merging in those changes. So we're good to go with editing here. I think to round out our test series, what I'm going to do is get this PR merged in. It doesn't look good yet, so right after this stream, I'm going to work on the visuals to make the screen look better, but it is working, and so that's going to help me out. So let's push up this PR. We'll look at the changes we made. That was a number of different changes. We're going to push up this PR. We're going to release to web, and we're going to release to native. We're going to start the build to release to native. That won't be done in the 7 minutes by the time we're done the stream, but that'll be fun to see that running in the background as we go. I'm going to tell you a little cheat that I do. I'm confident that I'm going to merge in my changes and they'll be good to go. So sometimes I deploy to web off of my branch before I've merged it in. That can get you into trouble if you have other things merged back into main. Don't do this in production, like in your commercial work and stuff like that. For my hobby work, I feel comfortable doing this. I'm going to deploy to web off of this branch and let that go while we're waiting for CI to finish. And I'm going to start talking about our summary while we're doing these things as well. So let's go back and step back in terms of what we've done. It can kind of be hard to think about what we've done because I'm just so used to looking at it now. Our app is looking really great. And because so many things just work the way you would expect. So what did we accomplish? We have one React Native application that runs on iOS, on Android, and on web. I'm going to start up Android Studio to start up. I don't even need Android Studio. I think the Android emulator will start. I want to see it running on Android if we can. This has not been reloaded in a while, so let me just see if I can even remember how to do this. Is it reloading? Looks like it is. No, I think the keyboard thinks it's there and it's causing a bit of an issue. Watching my CPU and watching my live stream to make sure we're not taking over the live stream with our Android build. This will be nice to see this. This will be nice to see the culmination to prove. And now I haven't been testing every single commit, so it's possible that I've broken something on Android, but hopefully we're good. I'll start my little summary over once we finish this. But you can see that the deploy to the website has worked. So let me pull that up. Firehose Expo. I'm logged in. Make sure I haven't added anything private. Nope, I think we're good. Can I edit? I can edit. I can edit my tags. Looking good. Very excited. Okay, we've deployed to web. Android, are you loaded up? Nope, not yet. Well, let's just keep doing multiple things at once. I see the pull request is done, so I can merge that in. I'm stressing my poor computer here. Let's just get it all visible, and then we can go from there. So close. Oh, now it's re-downloading. All right, Android, I don't blame you, but you might be the reason that I run over as I usually do. Let's wait. System UI, please wait. Please don't start over. I don't think it's starting over. I think it'll be good. It might not be good. All right, I'm gonna let Android run here. It keeps teasing me. I'm gonna let Android run here while I give the summary. We'll come back to it, even as it's running in that. So what we've done over this 8-part live stream series is we've built out an application, the start of it, in Expo using React Native Web that runs on Android, on iOS, and on the web. It's the same code base. It's 99% all the same code reused across them. And we get a great experience. It looks great. Using React Native Paper, we get this nice material design look and feel. Actually, on all platforms, we also have the option of dark mode. So let me just pull that up on here to show that to you. The same would happen if I turn on dark mode on the computer as well. We tried that in an earlier session. If I turn on dark mode and go back into the app, we already get a nice dark look and feel as well. And just by providing one theme color, red, it looks great. I'm a bit worried about this red on gray. That might not fit accessibility contrast ratios, so I might need to look into that and tweak it. But we're in pretty good shape in general. We have this nice side navigation using React Navigation. It integrates great with React Native Paper. It looks good. We actually get some responsive design to the sidebar, where on wider width it's there and fixed permanently, and on smaller widths it's narrower. Currently we only have 2 navigation items, unread and sign out. But once the full application is built out, there will be a red links page, there will be a tags page where we can see the list of the tags and get to them there, and we're good to go. We can add a URL. Let's go to codingitwrong.com and hit return. It fills in. We've got my little self-promotion text there that shows up there. We can mark links as red. We can delete them. Let's delete Google. And as of today, we can edit them. Don't worry about this cursor that's showing up. That's not something that happens on iOS. We can click edit. Ooh, notice there's a dark mode bug. So that's not quite as good. I think I know how to fix that really quick. So let me interrupt my triumphant summary to fix that bug. I'm going to go back to main, edit dark mode, and let's fix that dark mode bug. All right, sign in screen. Screen background, shared styles, body padding. Well, we don't need the shared styles for now. Let's just get that in. bookmark detail screen background. And instead of a view, let's just plop in the screen background. Let's see how that looks. That looks pretty good. All right. Let's say fix screen background in dark mode. Let's go back real quick. Edit. All right, interesting. So that's actually white while it's loading. That's because of this. So let's fix that. Contents. If not loaded, return null. And then we'll say, we'll copy and paste this. Else return this, and we just don't need the screen background here. We actually don't need any containing element. And here we're just going to say screen background contents. I think this will look better. We'll make a better loading setup at some point, but this will at least just make it look not unappealing. There we go. Now when we navigate it in, we have a nice dark background regardless. Yeah, that looks better. All right, let me clear out of this. Fix detail background in dark mode. And it was as easy as that. So let's get this PR running in the meantime. Yeah. So we've got responsive, we've got light mode and dark mode. We have these nice usage of these material design elements. And we have thorough testing that we've put in place with these screen tests using React Native Test Library that run quickly within about a minute or so for all of them. They cover the behavior to the point that we're confident as we make changes. Now we put a good amount of functionality into this initial screen with pull to refresh, loading states, error states. For example, if the server is off and you load, you get an error occurred while loading links. It looks like we still have the loading icon there, so there's still some bugs to handle. And that pink is not the best. It's okay though. Yeah. But yeah, overall we've got a really great looking app that even though it's a hobby application, yeah, it looks like I've messed up pull to refresh. I'll come back to that. Even though this is a hobby application, I'm able to make these changes, deploy to web, deploy to iOS. I could deploy to Android if I wanted to. It works really great. I'm able to build this link saving application, just like my to-do application, that works really great for my needs. I can own the data and I can own the code. So Expo with React Native Web for deploying to mobile and deploying to web. Let me just pull up the page so you can see it. Docs.expo.dev to give you one last pointer to where you can get started. One thing you can do to get started is to go to this code base. So this is an open source code base. It's under coding it wrong /firehose-expo. This is open source and will continue to be so. As I'm adding more screens, functionality, fixing errors like the loading state, this will be here. And so you could fork this library or just download the code and use it as the basis. Strip out all my stuff and build off of it. You'd be welcome to do so. This code is available for you. Or you can follow along with what we've seen in this series and build out the application the way you want it that works best for your needs. But either way, this is a really great option. So let's Expo for Web. Let's pull it up. Using Expo for Web. Expo for Web can work on any React Native project, which is interesting. No, okay. Well, this is maybe not the most informative in the world. But yeah, it works on web. React Native Paper works on web. React Navigation works on web. We've walked through the different conditions and edge cases to handle and everything like that. But I hope this live stream series has been useful. We're going to stop the series for now. 3 minutes over, 4 minutes over. And in future streams, we're going to go and do some other things. I think we will be coming back and revisiting this library this application some in the future. For example, one of the things I want to do in the future is extract some shared libraries. Now that I have two applications using the same auth approach, I'd like to put that in a shared library. I think even this skeleton of using React Navigation and React Native Paper in the way that I use it, I think that would be helpful to extract to use across these two applications and maybe future ones. So we'll do that and look how to test them, look how to deploy NPM libraries to React Native. Other things I want to look into: Expo web performance, how to improve it. Detox end-to-end testing for Expo and for CI. React Server Components is a new, not a React Native technology, but a new, cool, exciting React technology that I want to look into. Using Express on the server side. I haven't used it that much, so digging into that, especially how to get the same kind of thorough testing in Express we've done here. Also, code in the browser tools like Code Sandbox and others. I'd love to give these a try. So there'll be plenty of things we'll be doing on the live stream. Please check us out. We're going to be mixing up the days and the times to make things more accessible for folks. We're going to try some shorter stream times. Maybe you can make it over a lunch, but I really appreciate it. So if you're here in the chat, if you're watching and commenting on the recordings afterwards, I appreciate you joining in. The place you can find me and always find the latest of what I'm working on is codingitwrong.com. You'll be able to connect with me on Twitch, my YouTube for the recordings, my blog, Mastodon social network, other social networks, the ones that I am on. That's the place to catch up with me. So thank you for everyone for joining in. It's been really fun. I'm pumped about this application. This is an app I'm going to be using every day. And honestly, I'm excited about being able to move as quick as I can and not needing to wait a week to bring y'all along with me. No offense, y'all work very fast, but I need to go do other things for 7 days until I can come back together. But now I'm going to be able to blaze ahead. But we'll see you back. Check the schedule on Twitch to find out when. And yeah, I really appreciate everyone joining in, for the comments, for the questions, for the encouragement. And we will catch you online. See ya, everyone.